Dear Prime Minister, it is a great pleasure and an honor to have you here with us today and address our esteemed speakers, our participants from near and far, and the general community. As you know, this is a fireside chat, so it's supposed to be interactive, exactly. Open discussion, free discussion, and I hope we'll be able to address some very challenging questions. I know you're very familiar with this, and you have a lot of experience in addressing very challenging questions. So I will be keeping some notes. I will be reading some notes because memory is not one of my best assets at this age. So as I said, we would like to explore not just policy, but also vision. Something you have, something that distinguishes you personally from others. So in this particular case, your vision of where Greece will be going in the next, where Greece stands today in science and innovation, and where Greece will be going in the next 10 years. So before we start, would you like to have an opening statement?
No, I think you promised this to be an interactive discussion, so I'll spare you with the introductory speeches, and I'll go directly to your questions.
Fantastic. So let's dive in. So I'll start with the first theme. We have 5 themes. As I said, we'll try to keep the 30 minutes. The first theme is the future of research in Greece. Prime Minister, we have been following with great interest and the very impressive efforts your government and you personally have on AI. We were very happy to participate just a few days ago in an amazing event at Irodio, where you hosted Mr. Hassabis. And this is one of the, I believe, a great indications of what this government and this country can do if we really set a goal and will follow it. And AI has become a major drive and a major priority in the country. However, there are other areas where Greeks dominate internationally. One of them is biotechnology, in particular, which is the focus of this forum as well. Greek scientists abroad are in some of the largest positions in industry and in academia. However, this is happening abroad. When we look in our own country and what is happening in Greece, there is this big disconnect. What we see as success abroad doesn't happen in Greece. And if you would like to expand beyond that, just biotechnology, where do you see the whole field of research going, where it is today in Greece, and where do you believe it should be going in the next few years?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for mentioning the very interesting discussion I had with Demis Hassabis on Friday at Irodio. It was surprising to see 5,000 people show up for an event that was competing for attention with the basketball game that unfortunately we lost. But I think this is an indication that something really is changing in Greece in terms of our attitude towards innovation, entrepreneurship. And my fundamental belief is that Greece can become what I term an innovation nation by focusing on our ability to leapfrog other countries and making up the lost distance with many of our European counterparts. And I do think that if you look at the robustness of the ecosystem of entrepreneurial companies in Greece, we should be pleasantly surprised in terms of the number of companies, the availability of private funds, the exits that some of these companies have succeeded in putting together. So something clearly is happening in terms of the private ecosystem around innovation, research, and development. Now, when we look at the public space, the traditional way I think we do our or we fund our research, I think it's fair to say that a lot remains to be done. I think right now, if you look at and I speak after 6 years of experience in dealing with this issue, I do think that we still have a relatively fragmented system. where we have research centers which are supervised by the Ministry of Development and by the Secretary General for Research. But at the same time, we also have a lot of research taking place in our academic institutions, and it is very clear to me that these two spaces are not communicating in the way that they should. So one of the the ideas that I am very much focused on, something that we have discussed also in the public debate around research and innovation, public and private, is how can we create a unified research space. And maybe one solution, which again I'm putting forward, for the first time in the public dialogue, but I'm happy to engage with the research community, is to create a dedicated ministry for research and development, which will, however, also incorporate higher education. So that is. Again, as someone who has done government restructuring at the highest level, I know that these efforts, in order for them to actually be implemented, need a lot of preparation. So this is not something that we could do tomorrow, but it is certainly something that the country could have ready after the next elections, if we plan it correctly, and if we engage with the research community in a way to unify our research space, and then also look at the other institutions that we need to have that will supplement the government agency that will be in charge of a unified research space. So I'm ready to have this discussion in earnest, and in cooperation both with the Ministry of Education and the Deputy Minister, we will organize a more structured dialogue in terms of how this common research space could be set up. So this, as far as the public space around research, which would also, and again, I would insist on this, take into consideration the absolute size of the country and the fact that Greece is not in a position not to at least focus on certain sectors where we feel we have natural comparative advantages. Now, is biotech one of those sectors? The answer is yes. Why? I think for two obvious reasons. The first is that we do have a very dynamic domestic pharmaceuticals industry. We should not forget that right now we have 45 factories in Greece as a result of the incentives that we provided the domestic pharma industry. We had investments close to 2 billion euros as a result of the investment clawback. And a lot of this investment is not just in basic production, it is also in research and development. And of course, the second factor, I'm sure we'll discuss it, is our amazing expat community, which can act as a natural bridge between Greece and the cutting edge of life sciences abroad.
Fantastic. To the audience, don't forget that you heard this for the first time at Bio3. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. So this almost addresses already the next question, the next two questions I have for this theme, but nevertheless, I'm going to go through those very quickly, much faster, because I think a large part of that is already, as I said, is already addressed. So as you already know, I'm sure recently there is a strong outcry from the Greek scientific research community for the way that proposals are evaluated in programs such as Trust Your Stars. So following that, many scientists have suggested the creation of an independent authority to ensure more transparent and efficient review process, something that several other European countries have already established. For example, Austria, Norway, Czech Republic already have something like that. Do you envision that within the new structure, within the government, there will be space as well for an independent?
Absolutely. I was not happy, I'll be very honest here, with the way this program was run. And we're looking at options, because I think some of the complaints that were raised were legitimate as I looked into the details. But then, of course, there's a paradox here, because this program was run by the Ministry of Education, yet it's most of our experience in terms of assessing research proposals is not with the Ministry of Education. So we asked them to do something that they don't necessarily have a lot of experience in doing. So for me, it is imperative that we need an independent body. We can call it whatever we want, a national science board, but that will also leverage expertise from abroad. I don't necessarily want this to be just an internal process, maybe recycling the same proposals, but I do want sort of an objective assessment from abroad with certain specific guidelines, but I don't want to have any doubts regarding the meritocracy that we need in terms of assessing proposals. And the last thing we need is to enter this endless loop where, I mean, people question the results, and then we reassess their, their claims. And I think one of the reasons why this is happening is because fundamentally we don't have enough trust in each other. So if I think we can build a trustworthy body that is truly independent, then there will be less questioning of the results. And of course, we also need to determine, as a state, the amount of funding necessary. Because right now, okay, we have Horizon, these are European programs, and we can be quite competitive. We have programs that are funded through EU structural funds, but we don't have a permanent envelope. Mm-hmm. Well, we say that every year, there will be a call for X million euros run by in the same way, so that we offer some predictability and continuity when it comes to our research budget. It doesn't need to be a huge amount, but exactly. What I do focus on consistency and on knowing that this is going to be a permanent budget item, so that we also offer our research community more visibility. And of course, for me, what is critical is the bridges, the necessary bridges with industry, and how we support research and development at the level of private companies. There, as you know, we have very advantageous tax incentives. We've seen a significant increase in R&D spending by the private sector, and I do believe that we also see more connection between the private sector and our universities and our research centers, because in the past, this country has been held back by very radical, leftist preoccupations regarding the connection between industry and applied research that is taking place at universities. I do think that we have progressed in terms of universities understanding that they can produce knowledge which can be applied in the real world, that we can actually have a proper spin-off structure by which they can commercialize the knowledge that emerges from universities. We're clearly not where we want to be, but at least I think that attitudes are changing and they're moving in the right direction. Yeah.
Excellent. Continuity actually in funding is one of the long-standing requests from the scientific community. And coming to the last part of the first theme, I need to say that there is a prevailing sentiment among Greek scientists that research has never been truly a priority, a national priority, not from this government, not from any governments the last 30, 40 years. Of course, no state has what we call money tree, and particularly Greece still faces a heavy financial debt. However, national security has rightfully so been at the top priority, and your government has made remarkable efforts to safeguard the country. So my question is, what about research? Why do you think, if you think, that it has not been viewed by the same urgency as national security, given that research is the foundation of innovation and ultimately of Greece's financial economic recovery? So a lot of scientists believe that it should be not necessarily equal funding level, but it should be a national priority because it is our future. We cannot have innovation without having research. And this comes down to the funding.
Well, first of all, I happen to believe that research and national security are to a certain extent connected. If you look, for example, at the great success of the Israeli tech industry, exactly. A lot of the research was done for military purposes, and then it acquired dual-use nature. The same is true also for a lot of the basic research that was done in the United States that has resulted in technologies that we currently widely use. Of course, we need to be aware of our size and of our capabilities. But I do see a new emerging space developing in terms of technological innovation around defense. For the first time, we have a structure, LCAC, which has the ability to relatively quickly finance innovative projects in terms of product development, which of course entail a lot of basic research in order to get to a proof of concept product or service. And I think this inevitably will generate a lot of interest, not just by private companies, but also by all the researchers that are active in this space. So I do see a new niche, not necessarily directly correlated to the topic of your conference, which could benefit from direct funding at the product level, but which also entails, some basic research. Now, to your broader question, I do think that it brings me back to what we discussed previously. A very fragmented landscape, lack of proper evaluation of the quality of the research that has been produced, a tendency to sort of just not to challenge the status quo, because at some point in a competitive landscape, we also need to acknowledge that maybe not everyone is going to survive if they don't do work which is acknowledged as important and work that deserves funding. On the other hand, I think there's a great opportunity, if you look at also what's happening in the United States, maybe to repatriate some of the researchers who may find themselves now in a more challenging funding environment. Again, we need to be aware of the size of the country and the fiscal sort of constraints imposed upon us. But I do think it is perfectly legitimate in our annual budget to allocate a specific amount. I'm not ready to say what it would be to ensure continuity in research from government budgets, not just from European funds.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I think we have such good news in the area of research and basic research that I would like to shift to another area, maybe hoping for equal good news in those. And I will move to research, moving from research to innovation. So support for innovation and entrepreneurship has been one of the flagships of your government. And I think there will be no doubt among, at least within this room, that the whole country has been transformed in the last 5 to 6 years in this direction. However, in Greece, there is a lot of discussion, and the typical discussion is always, what can the government do for us? At BioInnovation Greece, our philosophy is a little bit different, maybe because most of us are coming from the Greek diaspora. And the philosophy we have there is not what the government can do for us, but what can we do for our country? So in this spirit, how do you see the most effective ways for researchers and entrepreneurs and organizations like ours, like BioInnovation Greece, to transform the scientific research and innovation into societal value? And specifically, how can initiatives like BioInnovation Greece, which aims to bridge research and innovation and entrepreneurship and the Greek diaspora, will align with national priorities to maximize their impact? In other words, how can we help our country?
Well, first of all, I think it's quite important to recognize that the Greek diaspora can add tremendous value to the country. If you look at the number of professors in the top 100 American universities, we are extremely overrepresented, which means that there is the intellectual caliber that under certain circumstances can be very, very useful to the country, especially in sectors such as artificial intelligence, but also life sciences. We have really leading figures, both in academia, but also in industry. For example, when Pfizer decided to set up its big data analytics center in Thessaloniki, initially maybe they took what they thought was a leap of faith, but they were so pleasantly surprised by the talent that was available that they scaled up their operation faster than they had anticipated, which is also a message also for other large companies to come and set up a premise in Greece. Primarily it could be an R&D center that can attract talent both from abroad and domestically. And again, I participated this Saturday in a workshop organized by Endeavor Greece, bringing together entrepreneurs, founders, but also important funds. And it was clear to me that there is a lot of dynamism in this space. So I don't think that the government should necessarily interfere in terms of crowding out investments that would take place from the private sector. We will have our own growth fund, which we are launching, which will invest in longer-term areas of strategic interest to the country. But at the end of the day, the funding and the entrepreneurial ecosystem needs to function according to the rules of the private economy. There are things we can do to help. For example, we have set up, one of the first things we did, a very, I would say, attractive stock option regime. If you look at our capital gains taxation, it is extremely sort of generous for owners of equity. There are other tools we can help in terms of ensuring that startup companies can have access to capital. We have these simple agreements for future equity, what we call SAFE, which are very much used in Silicon Valley, which are standardized ways for young companies to raise capital. Maybe this is something that we can add to an institutional framework. And then, of course, a big sort of part of our effort is to convince, the younger graduates of our universities, in particular our STEM graduates, that there is a future in entrepreneurship if they feel they have a product or a service that they can actually commercialize. And the fact that we have had success stories of companies that have been sold at significant valuations only, I think, fuels the interest of more young people to enter into this space. So I think we're at the beginning of what I hope will be a virtuous cycle. But let me repeat what I've said numerous times. I also discussed it today with the president of the European Council. We're not alone here. We're part of Europe. And in general, when you look at innovation and entrepreneurship in Europe and compare it to the US, we're not doing particularly well. And one of the reasons we're not doing particularly well has to do with the regulatory burdens that many of the companies that are established in any European countries face when they try to do business in another European country. So this idea of what we call the 28th regime, an EU-incorporated legal structure that will allow you to easily do business in all European countries, it's something which is very much requested by our entrepreneurial community, and hopefully something that we can work on at the European level. And of course, I think another advantage that we have and what we can do as a government, and this is particularly relevant to artificial intelligence, is to have a regulatory regime within the confines of the AI Act that encourages more innovation and that also offers those who are interested anonymized but well-curated data. And this is particularly relevant for healthcare, which is connected to the topic of your conference. There is an explosion. And I do think that if there's one area where AI unequivocally is going to be beneficial, I have lots of concerns about other areas, but when you look at healthcare, there is tremendous interest by startups, Greek, foreign companies, to offer new services and new solutions that will use the data that we have. So having a proper data management framework, especially for healthcare data, that is protective of personal, that is respectful of personal privacy, but also important and big enough for companies to actually use and develop new services, is going to be, I think, an area where we can really lead in terms of innovation.
Actually, this leads me to another question, that a follow-up question to that. I wasn't planning to ask about that, but since you mentioned it, clinical trials and biobanking is an area that a lot of scientists in the biotech area believe that Greece could thrive for several reasons. And we're lagging behind a little bit. We don't have a biobank. We don't. The clinical trials are not as much developed as they could be, and they could be an incredible source of additional revenue for the country. What do you see there happening or changing in the next few years?
Well, I think it's something we're working with the Ministry of Health. They're very much aware that we have lots of potential in terms of clinical trials. I think we have improved, but we clearly need to get better in terms of helping with recruiting and simplifying bureaucracy. I find the idea of a biobank fascinating, and I do think this is a project of national interest. We're thinking now about how we will structure it and how we will explain to people that this is something which is actually going to be beneficial for the entire population. Not an easy thing to do in an era of misinformation and disinformation and a lot of skepticism about government holding very, very important personal information. So this is a topic I've asked my team to come up with specific suggestions, but I do think it's something that the country needs, and I think we should really talk to the younger population and start with younger people who are more open and who are the ones who will most likely benefit in decades from now from us having this biobank established.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with you. This is a great opportunity, and we were reading the news the last few days where the CEO of Thermo Fisher was visiting the country and had discussions with you.
It's one of those discussions we've had. So we're looking at options and at potential partners, but we would also need your cooperation as thought leaders to explain in simple words to people why this is important. I think one of the very important steps we have taken has been, if you look at our healthcare policy, beyond what's happening in primary care and in hospitals, has been our preventive medicine strategy, which I think has been recognized also in Europe as really being at the forefront of a more modern approach towards health, and has delivered measurable results. I mean, we have saved lives, and not only that, we have made people sensitive to the idea that you need to take care of your health when you're healthy and not when you get sick. This is a sea change in terms of how we view health. But of course, it's also giving us a lot of data. So if we have mammograms for hundreds of thousands of women, or if we, this is valuable. Again, data that can be used to drive more innovative solutions.
I'm very happy. No, I'm sorry.
There's a clear change in terms of how we view health, and I think a lot of the work around the cutting edge work around longevity very much centers around what we can do today when we're healthy, to ensure that we will be healthy in 10, 20, 30 years from now, or to ensure that when we get older, our quality of life will be better. And a lot of it is very basic things. Don't smoke, don't drink too much, be careful about what you eat. But as we get more sophisticated and identify new biomarkers, this will become more critical, more personalized, and much more sophisticated.
I'm very happy to hear the word, putting the emphasis on the word data, because AI is essentially useless without good quality data. So data is definitely at the center there. So we're running out of time. We're at the end. We are at the last question, and I wanted to dedicate the last question to the young scientists in the room, and you mentioned that several times. So what message will you give to the young scientists and entrepreneurs that within this room today, many of whom are at crossroads? They're finishing the studies and they're thinking, should we stay? Can we find a job here? Should we go abroad and continue our career abroad?
Well, first of all, I do think that for young scientists, there are good jobs in Greece to be offered if you have a good CV. I think that's very, very clear to me, and the job market is becoming more competitive. And also as domestic companies scale up, as foreign companies come to Greece, why do they come? They come because they very much appreciate the talent pool, the product of our public universities. And that's why also many of the companies go where the universities are. That's why you see, for example, a tech hub in Gianena, and not just in Thessaloniki or Patra. You see companies going to Crete because they are looking for the graduates of our universities. And that's why I am quite optimistic about the potential to not just to stay in Greece and have a productive future. And of course, for those of you who will choose an entrepreneurial career, I think the chances of success are greater than they were, maybe some years ago. No one can guarantee success in the business of entrepreneurship, but at least the ecosystem is there, the support is there, there's more mentorship, there is more capital, there is a community of people who think like you do. And I think that the future for innovation and research is certainly brighter than what it was some years ago. And I think that if we also push through these reforms we are planning, we're going to be more disciplined in terms of how we use whatever money we can spend. Because again, it's not that we can spend an obscene amount of money, but I want to make sure that whatever money we use, whether it's European funds that we channel to Greece, or whether it's public funds, taxpayer money, what I don't want to see is I don't want anyone questioning the quality of the evaluation. I think we have excellent people from abroad who would help us, and that's what I envision. That's what we talk also with ESETEC in terms of sort of chartering this new landscape. Again, I can hear the criticism, why haven't you done this already? Trust me, we're very busy with lots of things. We have made progress on this front, but I think now it's time to really sort of accelerate. And frankly, I found because I want to be very honest, I found the public debate around innovation and research over the past months helpful also to me. I'm the first to always accept constructive criticism if at the end of the day it helps us getting better.
Fantastic. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
For joining us.